Melbourne just treats nightlife completely differently. You know, I think they've got a sense of what happens at night time is part of the identity of the city, whereas in Sydney, a lot of the people that have been pushing for the lockout laws see nightlife as being something dispensable.
The New South Wales Government introduced lockout laws and last drink restrictions in early 2014, designed to curb alcohol-fuelled violence in Sydney's CBD. But many believe the reforms are doing irreversible damage to the city's culture and nighttime economy. The exclusion zone stretches from Surrey Hills to the Rocks and from Kings Cross to King Street Wharf.
First and foremost, there's been a lot of venues closed down, and that's really important because these are places that were previously options for people to be able to meet up, socialise, meet new friends, see a band, hear a DJ, and so a lot of those places are gone now. There's been a lot of surrounding businesses that have now gone broke, so you've got a lot of places, particularly around Oxford Street in Darlinghurst and a few around Kings Cross as well. There's police signs everywhere. But I think the most devastating thing is just this atmosphere that's been cast around Sydney at night time, which I think really demotivates people from wanting to go out and engage with their city after dark, after they've finished work, or tourists when they come from other cities. So really, it's just been a complete vibe killer, and I think a lot of people don't realise that if they don't necessarily engage with the city on a day-to-day or weekly basis. But the people that live here, it's been hugely impactful.
Intoxication and fatigue together, you get a real cocktail because you're not interpreting the signals that you're getting around you, whether you be the perpetrator or the victim. When you drink alcohol, the first thing to shut down is the frontal cortex, and you go back to living in the brainstem. This is the fight or flight response, the sex urges we have, the genetic urges we have to procreate or to run away. This is what drives our emotional response. It's the stuff we learned as children, even as fetuses, about how we respond to emotional cues. None of that stuff, none of the education is going to change the way we're going to respond when we're heavily intoxicated.
Well, basically from 2008 onwards, successive governments have changed the law repeatedly to try and deal with the problem of alcohol-related violence in Kings Cross and in other parts of the city. And that began when they put the top 50 licensed premises on strict controls. Then after that we had 3 strikes and you're out. We've had a whole bunch of other reforms. And they've all had the effect of pushing this whole road further and further down. So the lockout laws are really just the last set of laws in a long line of reforms designed to deal with alcohol-related violence.
It worked fantastically in Kings Cross in the city of Sydney, and we've seen the results actually occur. Police officers are not dealing with just alcohol-related crime, and we can actually do extra work. And I think we need to remember the world has changed, and not for the better, with terrorism, and police actually need to divert the resources elsewhere.
What happened was that in the casino there was a slight kick up in the number of assaults, but the jump there was nowhere near as big as the drop in Sydney CBD or in Kings Cross. So it's really something of a flash in the pan. As far as Newtown is concerned, I know people think it's been going up there, but what happens in Newtown is that you get these sudden spikes in assaults. It's been going on. You see them either in Christmas, New Year, you see those sorts of jumps, or if there's a big band playing, or anything that will attract a lot of people in, entertainment-wise, will tend to have the effect of pushing up the assault rate.
Whilst the nighttime economy of clubs and businesses in Kings Cross and the CBD has been dramatically affected by the lockout laws, the Star Casino has been profiting. Share prices of Star Entertainment Group have doubled ever since the policy was introduced in 2014.
A lot of people are raising really legitimate questions about casinos. And sadly, what you find is most governments have no power whatsoever to do anything about it because of the contracts that idiots beforehand had signed. And yes, I'm happy to call our policymakers of the past idiots because they sold out to casinos.
For those directly affected by Sydney's lockout laws, the reactions are mixed. Melbourne was one of the first cities to implement lockout laws in 2008, but they were dumped within months amid a storm of intense media coverage and public outcry. And while it seems the southern state is capitalising on Sydney's strict new measures, some locals believe it's a good idea to bring lockouts back to the city. Others don't think there's really anything to worry about.
People come into the city to drink and have a fight. And we saw that with some of the one-punch killings in New South Wales. So yes, definitely I think it's a good idea.
Melbourne is such a safe place, and to put the lockout laws in, I think it's just removing the Melbourne vibe.
Teach people to not be violent. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really alcohol that's doing it. It's not locking people out. It's not excessive drinking. It's just like people not being able to take control over themselves.
According to Victoria Police statistics, there have been no significant drops in alcohol-related violence. It is in the best interest of Robert Doyle, who is the Mayor of Melbourne, to make Melbourne a 24-hour city. The first steps have already been implemented with 24-hour public transport on all major lines.
There are people now calling for lockout laws around Australia. We tried that back in 2008. It didn't work. We've gone the other way, which is harder work, to try to create a culture that doesn't promote violence and is not just about the sale and consumption of alcohol. And we've been remarkably successful. And research that we did in the capital city shows that Melbourne's nighttime economy is booming, absolutely booming. Great for employment for young people in hospitality in particular. And yet alcohol sales are down by more than 10% and crime against the person is down.
People do want to stay out later, people work later hours than ever before, and they deserve to be able to go out too, but also they deserve to do that safely. So we have a very balanced agenda, but for those people who are really happy with the way that the current situation is with the lockouts, I would say that that's a really one-sided agenda, and we need to avoid that as much as possible.
And so the debate rages on. Does Sydney need to face the music and adapt to the rules, or do global cities have to accept that a base level of violence may always exist? A Keep Sydney Open petition with over 12,000 signatures is currently under review with the New South Wales Government. Whether the policies will be altered or retracted altogether is anyone's guess. Until then, though, the doors remain locked.
Inside a room with battered walls, suffocating from outside.